commence. I think the first announcement is that we are missing Councillor Andrews. So just to inform you that I will be chairing the meeting tonight. Right, can I make sure that everybody's got an agenda? Yeah, everybody's got the phones off. Is the live stream working? Yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up there. And can somebody give me the thumbs up on the call to ensure that everybody can hear us on there, please? Yeah, I think I'm getting a thumbs up there. Yeah, good. Right, apologies for absence.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Andrews. Councillor Potter will chair the meeting this evening. Apologies have been received from Councillors Bailey and Mackenzie. Councillor Graham will substitute for Councillor Bailey. Councillor Dockwell will substitute for Councillor Mackenzie.
Right, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? Well, I'll make a start on that one. For item 12, I have some good friends who are the nearest objectors to that. So on that basis, I think I need to declare that interest and withdraw from that item. So unfortunately, as Vice Chair, we need a Vice Chair. So thank you. I have a nomination for Councillor Cleary to stand in. Do we have any seconder? Yeah, I saw Councillor Thackeray first there. Thank you. So that's for item 12. Right, any other declarations of interest? No, I'm seeing nobody there. Right, we shall move on to the minutes on pages 3 to 8. Is everybody happy with the minutes from the last meeting? I can't see any dissenting voices. Would somebody like to move those? Yes, Councillor Cleary, thank you. Seconder? Yeah, Councillor Mason, thank you. Can we take that as by general affirmation? Yes, I'm not seeing any objections to that. Thank you. Right. I have urgent business. I have no urgent items of business as far as I'm aware. No, nobody's telling me anything otherwise. Right, schedule of items to be determined by the committee. There are a couple of things here. Item 13, due to the late pages and the fact that there was it says formal complaint, but there was some confusion about the actual description. So I propose that we withdraw that one from the agenda for tonight so that it can be re-consulted on briefly and come back to a future meeting. So I'll propose that from the chair. Does anybody want to second that? Councillor Cleary, thank you. Can we take that as general affirmation?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I presume the applicant is aware of this deferment.
Yeah. Do you want to talk to that, Jill?
I've left a message with the agent and emailed the agent, but I haven't had a response back from them. So they have been informed. Yeah. And
we were intending to defer it on that basis anyway, so we're just going to withdraw.
I'm happy to second that. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Do we have general agreement that that be withdrawn from the agenda? Yeah, I think we'll take that by general affirmation. The other thing is items 9, 10 and 11. On the basis that we have two items for Goose Track Lane, West Lilling, which are items 9 and 11, which there are some quite great similarities to, I propose that item 10 be brought forward. So we go 8 to 10, so there's nobody waiting around there. And then we will go for the 2 items in West Lilling, but we'll take them in reverse order. So we're going 8, 10, 11, 9. Presume there's no objection to that. Right, so yeah, I'll do that. Right, I think that brings us to item 6, which is on pages 11 to 29 of the agenda, Forge Cottages, Bath Lane at Malton. So I'd better get to the page myself. Variation of condition 16 of planning approval 18/00429 full, dated 3rd of the 7th 2018, to allow alterations to the internal layouts design of the dwellings and to change one of the single garages to a double garage in Great Bath. I shall hand this one over to Alan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 6 relates to the site at Forge Cottages, Great Bath. The application was reported to Planning Committee last month, but was deferred at members' requests to allow the applicant the opportunity to consider scheme viability with regards to the local needs occupancy condition, which is on the extant permission and which is recommended as part of the recommendation for approval in this case. If possible, could we bring up the aerial photo in the presentation, just to remind members of the location of the site? Thank you. So in terms of the item on the agenda, if members refer to page 23 on the agenda, it includes an email from the agent on behalf of the applicant, which confirms that they would like to proceed as is without requesting the removal of the local occupancy clause. Aside from this, there are no other updates, and the recommendation remains as conditional approval as set out earlier in the earlier report. Thank you, Chair. No other updates on that item.
Right, thank you, Alan. Do we have any questions on that? No, seeing no offers there. Right, we shall go into debate then. Anybody want to comment on that? Is that your area, Simon? Steve?
It's mine actually.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But I have nothing to add to what I said last time. Thank you.
Anybody else? Would anybody like to move the officer's recommendation of approval? Right, well, I will move the recommendation of approval from the chair. Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder, thank you, Councillor Cleary. Right, we'll go to the vote then, please.
Councillor Braxton.
For.
Councillor Cleary.
For.
Councillor Dockwra.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hope. For. Councillor Mason.
For.
Councillor Potter.
For.
Councillor Thackeray.
Abstain.
That's 7 votes for. It's approved.
Right, thank you. Right, next we're on to page 3030 of the agenda for item number 7. 21/01661 Major Full. Demolition of existing silage clamp and replacement of silage clamp with associated works, including erection of agricultural shed over silage clamp structure, part retrospective. And this is Neves.
Yes, thank you very much. If we could just have the aerial map up to begin with, that would be great. Yes, so the aerial map indicates the position of Woodhouse Farm, which is an existing long-established farmstead located to the west of Acklam, farmed by R. Inman and Sons. The site is located outside of development limits within the wider open countryside, and it also falls within an area of high landscape value. The application, as has been mentioned, seeks permission for the demolition of the existing silage clamp, which is the part retrospective element of the proposal, and the replacement of the silage clamp with associated works, including the erection of an agricultural shed over the silage clamp structure. I'll just run through the photographs, please. The first one is a view of the site from the southwest, and the building that's just closest in the photograph is the one that was recently approved by members last year for dairy cubicle housing. The next photograph indicates the position where the silage clamp was formerly located, and it's in this location that the replacement silage clamp would be positioned. So as you can see, it's well grouped with existing buildings to the north, to the east and to the south. The next photograph is just showing that from a slightly different angle. So it is looking eastwards. So the new building that's under construction you can see, but also the sort of agricultural land to the south. The next photograph is a photograph taken from further to the west. Normally this would show you its context in the landscape, but as you can see, the construction materials are sort of there temporarily. The next photograph is that from a more southwesterly position. And you do get the sense of the kind of grouped range of farm buildings that are currently present at this site. And the next photograph is a view from that same position looking southward towards the open farmland. So it is quite a prominent site on a higher topographical level, but as I've mentioned, the existing buildings, it would be well grouped. And I think the last photograph is one where you can see it is a little bit distant, but this is one I actually took last year, which shows the original silage clump that's been removed, and you can see the sort of open nature of it and the polythene and the tyres, which were, quite often traditionally found on silage clumps, but this proposal is intended to improve that previous form. So as noted in the report, the description was updated following the site visit. The case officer, myself, was advised during the site visit that the removal of the silage clamp was undertaken following advice from Natural England, and an officer who'd visited the site who'd confirmed the structure would require replacement due to its age and form. The agent is advised that rebuilding the clamp will result in a higher quality silage storage solution. It is noted that due to the revised description and the new press notices that we've put in, the publicity will actually expire tomorrow at midnight. And we also indicated in the report that further consultation is ongoing with the lead local flood authority. New drainage information has been provided by the agent today, which includes percolation testing results to confirm that soakways are viable, and a new drainage strategy which illustrates the position of a rainwater harvesting tank and soakaway crates, and that's indicated in the plan which is on members' desks. There was also ongoing proposed maintenance schedule. So all this information has been forwarded to the lead local flood authority for review. Therefore, members are asked to delegate the final determination of this application to the Planning and Development Manager following review of any consultation responses and once the LLFA are satisfied with the proposed scheme. To date, no third parties have made any comments, and this is before members just solely due to the scale of the development. As I've noted in the report, this is considered to be acceptable in principle, supporting an existing and established farm. And in terms of the character and form and impact on the area of high landscape value, it's considered to be acceptable. The scale is generally in line with what's already there. It's well grouped, and the use of appropriate materials is incorporated within the scheme. The plans also indicate that solar panels will be positioned on the southern roof slope. In terms of amenity, the distance from neighbouring dwellings is considered to be significant, and that they wouldn't be materially affected by the proposed new building. And effectively it is covering what was an existing silage clamp, so it's considered to be an improvement upon that arrangement. and the Council's Environmental Health Officer has confirmed no objection. In terms of drainage, I've covered the new drainage material we've received. The agent has also confirmed the following points this morning. They've confirmed that surface water is now proposed to be harvested to a tank for use on the farm, providing drinking water for cows and the wash down of dairy. From the harvesting tank, any surplus will go to an attenuation tank. Surface water drainage is fully separate to the effluent collection. By putting a roof over the silage clamp, potential effluent will be significantly reduced. Harvesting that water further reduces effluent creation. The silage making process, even when undertaken to the highest standards, will generate some effluent. It's proposed to direct the effluent to the existing lagoon through the existing system on the farm. It will then be utilised at an appropriate time of year, either as natural fertiliser with the slurry. The slurry system has been designed to comply with the SSAFO regulations and is to EA standard. So officers are of the view that that's considered acceptable in principle and will form an enhancement upon the current arrangements, but as we've noted, subject to the LLFA approval. North Yorkshire Highways have confirmed no objection to this proposal also, and therefore it's considered that subject to the recommended conditions and final review with the LLFA, that this is acceptable. And would ask you to delegate the final decision to the Planning and Development Manager for approval pending that final response. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Niamh. We have one speaker on this application, which is Mr. Tim Inman, the applicant. Can you hear me all right, Mr. Inman?
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm unmuted now, so...
Yes, we can hear you all right. You have 3 minutes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name's Tim Inman, and I and my family are the applicants for this application. First, I'd like to thank Planning Officer Niamh Bonner for working with us to get to this point whereby the application is recommended for approval. We run a dairy farm near Ackland Village. We milk 370 New Zealand Friesians. The application before you is for a roof clamp. The new silage clamp replaces our old clamp, which was open to the elements and had come to the end of its life. It is important for us as dairy farmers that we feed our livestock high quality fodder. The new silage clamp will ensure that the grass we harvest will become the best silage we can produce. We propose to harvest the rainwater from the roof of the new silage clamp, and we'll use that to water stock and washing out the dairy. Any other surface water will be put to soak away. The runoff from the old clamp was not harvested. In addition, having a roof over the clamp reduces significantly the potential of effluent runoff. The new clamp will be very important to our operation at Wood Farm, and I therefore respectfully ask you to consider and supporting this application today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Inman. Right, do we have any questions? I see no questions. Right, we will go into debate. Well, Councillors Cleary and Graham, do you want to fight over this one, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, well, here we are again, another investment from the Inman family. I'm very happy at the outset to propose that we follow the recommendation to delegate the final authority. It follows all the policies. It also ticks a number of boxes for which we have no policy, but for which agriculture and Ryedale are looking forward in terms of solar PV on top of the roofs and rainwater harvesting. I've nothing much to add to our great report that we received with the photographs that show quite clearly the siting within the existing steading. I note the request that we defer pending local lead flood authority comments. My only addition would be to request, and again, very happy to delegate to the planning officers, request any lighting that's involved with this development be subject to some sort of scrutiny. I don't know whether anything's proposed, but it's quite a dominant site, and I think we should be wary of the lighting, of any lighting on this development. So I'm very happy therefore, and I would remind remind committee that the only reason it's before us this evening is because of the scale of it. So I'm very happy to propose approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Can I just ask Neve to come back? Is there likely to be any issue with lighting?
Just having a sort of final review of the plans, I think it looks like the building is sort of entirely enclosed to the two wider elevations, the north and the south. It looks like it's open to the more sort of inward facing northeastern elevation, which is kind of orientated towards the farm, the kind of inner part of the farm, which is less open in comparison to the photos I'd shown you to the southwest. So the southwest elevation is itself completely enclosed also. I think we could definitely recommend a condition for lighting prior to its installation. That means if there was anything, you know, even years in the future that was to occur on the building in terms of lighting, we would still have that ultimate control. So I think that seems like a sensible idea.
Right, thank you, Neve. Yeah, that seems quite sensible to me, and considering that it's been proposed to approve it subject to delegation to the planning manager, I think that can all be confirmed with the applicant anyway. Yeah. Right, would anybody else like to speak on that one? Or second it even? Councillor Holt, would you like to speak on that or just seconding?
I'd just like to second that, Chairman. We're looking after the farmers and that's what we should be doing. Thank you. Right,
thank you, Councillor Holt. That's proposed and seconded. Anybody else? No? Yeah, I'd just like to echo the comments about rainwater harvesting and the solar panels. And even though that isn't, it's not something that has to be conditioned, it's both sensible, sustainable, it's good for the farmer because it'll be saving him money as well. Right, so everybody's had oh, Councillor Thackeray.
Yes, on to add to that, and I presume you're referring to climate change initiatives. I just wondered whether or not that would offset the methane that's produced by all the cows. I'm tempted to ask for a no smoking condition.
Thank you for that comment, Councillor Thackeray. Right, in that case, anybody else? No, we'll go to the vote then.
Councillor Braxton.
For.
Councillor Cleary.
For.
Councillor Dockra.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hope.
For.
Councillor Mason.
For.
Councillor Potter.
For.
Councillor Thackeray.
For.
That's 8 votes for.
Thank you. That takes us on to agenda item 8. 22/00026 Major Full. Erection of a building comprising 14 units for classes, etc. Uses together with associated car parking and landscaping. And this one is Alan's again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, item 8 on page 55 of the agenda. The application is to be determined by committee as a major development because of the floor area of the building exceeding 1,000 square metres. There are no objections to the application. There's no updates to the report as published, aside from I would like to add to the recommendation an informative in relation to working within the proximity of overhead electric lines. As members will see from the photos within the presentation, there are overhead power lines affecting this site, so I propose that an informative is added. In terms of the site itself, it relates to plots 11 and 13 of the Enterprise Park, which is being progressed at quite a pace. The site does benefit from an outline permission for B1, B2 and B8 uses, and the application in this case is speculative with no end users identified at this stage. national and local policy provides support in principle in respect of business expansion and employment. However, in this case, the proposal relates to use class E, and within the report I've explained that use class E was added in September 2020 and is quite a broad use class. So in this case, the LPA is mindful of the town centre first principle set out in the MPPF and the aims of policy SP7 in relation to maintaining and enhancing the vitality and viability of the town centre. In light of the planning policy objectives of maintaining and enhancing the town centre, it is considered reasonable and necessary to impose a condition restricting the use of the building to specific use classes and subclasses consistent with the outline permission, the site allocation, the MPPF and the adopted policy of the development plan. In terms of the scale and appearance of the building, it's considered to be in keeping with recent developments within the enterprise park, and there would be no effect on the setting of the AUMB. It's therefore recommended that permission is granted subject to the 12 conditions as listed at the end of the report, plus the informative in relation to working close to overhead power lines. So I'll just move on to the presentation and the slides for this item. So yeah, first of all, we've got the aerial photo. It's actually quite a recent aerial photo, but it's out of date, as the plots that are referred to by, within this application are still undeveloped in the aerial photo, and so are the plots to the west and to the north, which have permission and are in the process of being built out. So you can see the site in relation to the York Road Industrial Estate to the east and the newer units to the north and the west. Access is gained off York Road to the north along Cherry Farm Close. So moving on to the next slide, this is a photo taken within the Enterprise Park. This is facing towards the plots to the north of the application site, which is currently under construction. And members might recall that building is the subject of an application which came before members, I believe, last year, because what you can see at the front there is the nursery building, which was permitted as part of that major development. So that photo is taken facing south-southeast. The next photo is actually further along the road, facing towards the application site. You might be able to make out the overhead power lines in the background there. And then the next photo is panning round across the site, which at the time of the visit is being prepared in advance of permission being granted. And the next slide, please. Just panning round southward. And the next slide, again, is just heading sort of southwest, and this is another recently permitted building which wasn't a major development, so it didn't come before members. I believe that's the final slide. So yes, that concludes the presentation on that item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, we have no speakers on this item, so do we have any questions? Yes, Councillor Mason.
Do we have any figures on what level of building this is going to meet? What standards for particularly energy efficiency? You know, like BREEAM standards or anything like that? I couldn't find it.
In this case, I don't believe that detail's included with the application.
So this is just another chuck 'em up quick. That's not an opinion I need from you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Right, we'll move into debate. Does this slide into your area, Michael? Right, Councillor Cleary.
Very much so, Sutton Zambo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've nothing much really to add, other than to move approval as per the recommendation. Just a couple of comments in terms of energy efficiency and insulation, what have you. I think that will be probably determined better with the end use. You can go too far overboard and go the wrong way if you build in the wrong details before you know what the building's going to be used for. further than that, I'm pleased to see that it's a speculative development. It shows a certain amount of confidence in the local and wider economy, which is good to see. So I'm therefore happy to move approval as per the recommendation.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Thackeray.
Yes, going back to the previous application, or when it came before us, I think last year, as Alan said, I raised the question as to the fact that there has been no provision made for people to cycle to this site. There's no safe route for parents and children to access the nursery other than by car or by foot and crossing a busy road with no pelican crossing. I raised that at the original application stage, and I'd like to repeat that again, because in the day and age in which we're living in, trying to get traffic out of Malton, this seems to me just like one of the perfect hoovers to drag cars and light vehicles through Malton, because there's no four-way access to York Road Industrial Estate. In particular, and I don't want to steal Councillor Cleary's thunder, the lack of a cycle path is tantamount to medieval in the year 2022, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. I have to ask a question after Michael's comment. I don't understand the logic of talking down energy efficiency in light of current energy prices. That sounds completely bizarre in my head, to be honest, but maybe that's the way I think, and maybe that's the way Michael thinks. The solar and car charging seems to be a bit of a tick box exercise. It's just disappointing that, again, we're not looking to build efficiencies into our buildings, as simple as that, and I think we need to look at that in what we do with the local plan review as well. And just to answer Simon's question, perhaps we should have put a roundabout at Hutton Zambo Junction, a four-way roundabout with access to York Road.
Thank you. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you. Just as a matter of personal reply, it does depend. I did say that I didn't decry or whatever energy efficiency. I just said that at this stage, it'd be unwise to build in something that would be not appropriate to the end use. If, for example, it's a wider, more open span use, for example, air source heating would not be a good investment. If it's going to be multicellular use of that building subdivided, then possibly air source heat units would be more appropriate. I rest my case that it depends on the end user as to what energy efficiency methods will be used.
Thank you. Councillor Thackeray.
Well, I doubt if it is going to carry any weight whatsoever, but I suspect that if this development was being planned for Holland or Belgium, the suggestion that you wouldn't have a children-friendly, parent-friendly cycle path to access it would rule it out completely. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Mason.
Just for a matter of clarification, I wouldn't put an air source heat pump in there at all without decent efficiencies, meaning the right insulation into buildings first, Michael. You have to get the terminology right to make sure we put the right things. If you talk about air source heat pumps, that's heating generation. It's not necessarily efficiency. Efficiency comes to the building in fabrics of how we actually make the building efficient in the first place to have air source put in place.
Well, you shouldn't be, but go on.
I would just like to put on record that Malton Town Council should have requested a recommendation for a cycle path, and I'm very surprised that they didn't. Thank you.
Right, have we all done on that one? Right, well, I'll just make a couple of comments from the floor. Yes, I believe there should be adequate, if not even better than adequate, insulation in every building that's built, because at some point, even if the doors are left open, there's some point where you've got to close them and you want to keep the heat in. So we should have adequate levels of insulation to every building in this country. Just a small comment, there is actually a cycle path that runs out to York Road. It is completely useless in terms of cycle paths. It's stop and start at every junction that comes in. You've got to cross the main road. It's the usual cycle path that's badly designed by people who don't ride bicycles, and it's high time that that changed. That said, it's been proposed. Did we have a seconder? Right, Councillor Mason. Thanks, we have a seconder. So, therefore, we will go to the vote.
Thank you. So that is voting for the recommendation and the additional informative that Alan suggested in relation to the overhead lines. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Braxton.
4.
Councillor Cleary.
4.
Councillor Dockwra.
4.
Councillor Graham.
4.
Councillor Hope.
4.
Councillor Mason.
4.
Councillor Potter.
4.
Councillor Thackeray.
4.
That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 votes for. That's approved.
Right, thank you. Now, just to confuse everybody, we are going on to item number 10, which is on page 99 of the agenda, which is item 21/00889/73 alpha. Variation of condition 1 of planning approval 16264 REM, dated 10th of the 8th 2017, to retain proposed single garages to 17 and 18 Hillside Way, inclusion of roof lights, amendments to access and repositioning of fence to 19 Hillside Way, and omission of common parking to the east of number 19 Hillside Way. Over to Niamh. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could just go to the first aerial map, that would be great. This is a sort of wider aerial view just to provide the context of where Hillside Way is in terms of West Lutton. So it isn't far away, as you can see there, from the community primary school, and the precise site is the dwellings of 17, 18 and 19, which are at the end of the cul-de-sac. So if you've had a chance to have a look at that, I'll just move on to the next aerial map. And this shows the site just at a kind of more comprehensible scale. So I will run through the photographs. This aerial imagery isn't up to date. The 3 properties are developed, and the 2 semi-detached properties which were under construction at that point are, sold and occupied by third parties. So as I've mentioned, 17 and 18 Hillside Way are the pair of semi-detached properties, and 19 Hillside Way is the detached chalet bungalow. The site is located within the development limits of West Lutton, and each of the properties has off-street parking available to it. As noted in the report, the 3 dwellings were approved under the outline application from 2012 and the reserved matters application from 2016. It has appeared that there are discordances with the original permission, and because of that, the application has been requested by us at the Local Planning Authority in order to try and regularise the 3 properties. So the application seeks approval for the variation of condition 1 of the reserved matters application for a number of things, and these include the continuation of having the right to create single garages at number 17 and 18, the inclusion of roof lights, amendments to the access and repositioning of the fence at number 19 Hillside Way, and the omission of the originally proposed single common parking space to the east of number 19 Hillside Way that would have served the wider residents. The proposed plans also show a more limited domestic curtilage to plot 17 and 18. This has resulted in a larger garden area being under the ownership of plot 20 Hillside Way. It's been advised that the sale of this land was undertaken prior to these properties being sold on to the current owners, so they would have been fully aware of the level of domestic curtilage that they were purchasing at the time. The concrete apron, which is referenced in the report to the front of number 17 and 18, is now proposed for retention rather than removal, as it had been previously proposed to facilitate the installation of a section of new pavement. The roof lights installed at number 19 serve an additional first floor bedroom, which is clearly shown on the proposed plans, and it also includes a bathroom. The plans indicate that there is an escape roof light. This is considered acceptable to include within this section 73, and it has been facilitated via a very small increase in the overall roof height of that bungalow by 500 millimetres. There's also the amendment of the approved porch canopy to a flat roof porch canopy at number 19. I'll just run through the photographs, and hopefully some of that will have given you context for the photos we can look at now. The first one is a photograph showing the two sort of field style gates, and these serve number 19 to the left hand side and number 20 to the right hand side. Number 20 Hillside Way has been present for a long number of years. I think it must have been one of the original properties built at the cul-de-sac. The next photograph, it sort of shows this but with a better view of number 19, and you can appreciate the garage of number 19 and also the bungalow just behind it with the chimney. So the next photograph is this again. It's a better view of the number 19 Hillside Way, which is the bungalow, and you can see the roof lights there, which are proposed for regularisation as part of this. The next photograph is showing the concrete apron and the properties of number 17 and 18 Hillside Way, which are the pair of semi-detached properties. These are located at a slightly lower ground level. You'll be able to see that in the next set of pictures. So it's at this point where the pavement was originally proposed to sort of follow on from this point, but the concrete apron has instead been retained. The next photograph shows a better view looking from property number 17, and you can see that the concrete apron is sort of informally used for parking as well. The next photograph shows really kind of the final part of the cul-de-sac here. You can see the road's not in a great state of repair at the moment, but it is much wider than the remainder of Hillside Way, and it does allow for parking and turning, and it does really kind of seem at this point that the concrete apron's in sort of quite a tidy state of repair. The next photograph is a view from within number 20, which is one of the original properties, looking towards the area which was originally proposed to form part of the curtilage of 17 and 18 Hillside Way. The next photograph shows the view from that point. So it's more limited than was originally indicated on what were the approved plans. The next photograph is from within the domestic curtilage of number 17 Hillside Way. So they have built a shed, and it's in that general location that they do retain the right to build the garage if members are happy to approve the scheme this evening. The next photograph is again within the curtilage of number 17. It indicates, you know, there is usable space there. The following photograph, which I believe is the last, shows the similar, it's actually basically identical, the similar level of amenity space at the adjoining property, which is number 18. I have got one more. Actually, I think I've got two more. It's just a slightly better view of the number 19, the detached bungalow. And the next one is just another view of that, so you can appreciate the porch that's been installed. If we could just go back perhaps to the second aerial photograph, we might leave it there just while I run through the next points. Members will be aware we have a letter, 2 letters of concern from the Parish Council. There has been positive responses received from the owner of number 17 Hillside Way, and also a letter of support from the occupier of 2 Thirlby Road in West Lutton. In terms of the principle of this new residential development has been long established on this site, and the dwellings constructed. The proposal continues to be compliant with the policy requirements. In terms of form and character, I mean, we have to acknowledge there have been quite a varied number of amendments to the scheme. The changes to 17 and 18 do include significantly lower amenity space, but this was the basis on which these properties were purchased by the current owners, and not all occupiers wish to have large gardens. So on balance, given there is this amenity space to the rear and to the front as well, this is considered acceptable. The proposal to retain the right to build out the previously approved garages is also considered acceptable. The proposed scheme will include new landscaping to the front of these dwellings, with the planting of a beech hedge. This has already been undertaken at number 19, and it will be conditioned to be undertaken at 17 and 18, and that will help to improve the overall sort of appearance. The proposed amendments, including the retention of the concrete apron, are noted. It is forward of the defined domestic curtilage for these properties, and it is noted that a footpath would have resulted in a higher quality appearance in terms of the street scene, but it is acknowledged that the concrete apron can help to facilitate turning at this point in the cul-de-sac and does offer informal parking. It's noted that the general highway at this point isn't in a great state of repair, but the concrete apron appears relatively uniform and of a decent standard, and it's not considered that its retention would result in material harm in terms of the character of the area. The proposed amendments to number 19, including the omission of the common parking space and the roof lights and the porch, are also considered acceptable. In terms of neighbouring amenity, it's not considered that there would be a materially harmful impact as a result of this scheme. And in terms of access and highway safety, I would note, and it was detailed in the report, that I had a site visit to the site with the North Yorkshire Highways Improvement Manager. The concerns from the Parish Council were considered during this visit, and the Improvement Manager assessed the site and the wider fully, and he did undertake measurements. They confirmed that on balance they were satisfied broadly with the retrospective development in its current form. The loss of the single common parking space was considered acceptable. They did, however, recommend a proportionate condition to ensure that there were some improvements to the accesses at the two semi-detached properties in line with the standard requirement E50. This will include new curbing between the domestic driveway and the concrete apron that will prevent potential dragging of gravel onto the public highway. Further responses from the owners of 17 and 18 Hillside Way have been received to confirm they are willing to undertake the necessary limited works as indicated by Highways, and they will do the additional planting. We did get an absolutely sort of concrete letter from the occupier of number 18 Hillside Way, because at the time of writing we hadn't quite had that. So we are satisfied that all parties are fully signed up to the improvements that need to happen. Once, if this is approved by members, this can be checked via a planning compliance visit, and that will be our intention. 6 months has been recommended for these improvements, as they are now in the separate ownership, and that's considered a reasonable length of time to be able to do what are hopefully fairly limited works. Therefore, subject to the identified conditions, we are satisfied that this proposal will conform with policies SP1 to 16 and 20 of the Ryedale Local Plan and the National Plan and Policy Framework. So the recommendation is now for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Niamh. Well, we don't have any speakers on this one, so do we have any questions for the officer? Councillor Thackeray.
Yes, is that an adopted highway, Niamh?
I believe so. I think I would have heard if it hadn't have been. I did do the visit with the Highways officer, so I think he would have made that distinction if it wasn't the case.
So my question would be, if it is an adopted highway and it is the responsibility of Highways, I would suggest we write to them and tell them to maintain the road, rather than giving other people instructions about what they should do.
Any more questions? Right, we'll move into debate. So I don't think we've got any members remotely near to that bit. So does anybody want to kick off? Apart from Councillor Thackeray, that is. Councillor Cleary, I knew I could rely on you.
In the absence of, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no great comments. I do take Councillor Thackeray's comment about the state of the highway, but then I think that would be a fairly universal comment about the highways in the general area. Yeah, and thank you, Niamh, for explaining so concisely what's been going on here and what's proposed. I have nothing really further to add other than to recommend approval as per the recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who wants to talk or merely to second it? Thank you, Councillor Dockery. That's seconded. So in the absence of anybody else, we'll go to the vote.
Councillor Braxton?
4.
Councillor Cleary?
4.
Councillor Dockery?
4.
Councillor Graham?
4.
Councillor Hope?
4.
Councillor Mason?
4.
Councillor Potter?
4.
Councillor Thackeray?
4.
Councillor Windrus? Were you? Yeah. That's 8 votes for. That's approved.
Right, thank you. Then we now go on to agenda item 11 on page 113 of your agenda. This is 21/00925 full. Erection of one detached 6-bedroom replacement dwelling at the Lodge Goosetrack Lane, West Lilling. And this one is Niamh's again. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could just go to the first aerial photograph, that would be great. Yeah, so this is sort of a wider context setting image. And if members are familiar with West Lilling, this site is on Goosetrack Lane, which actually runs for a large part of the village, but just on the way to the north of the village towards Sheriff Hutton. The next aerial map shows a sort of closer image of the site. The lodge is a 2.5-storey dwelling. It's set in very expansive grounds to the north of the village. It falls outside of the village development limits and is considered to be quite highly visible within the street scene. The dwelling is of a significant scale, and the original main dwelling incorporates an attractive traditional form. You can see from the aerial map that there is a functional amenity space located to the rear of the property, which is to the north, where parking is undertaken and where garaging is present. There's more formal garden space to the west and the south, including a quite high status approach to the site via an avenue-style driveway. Agricultural land also falls within the ownership of the site to the north and west. And West Lilling itself is characterised by traditional residential development with a strong pattern of traditional roadside cottages. The lodge, which is sited to the north of the village, represents in architectural terms a higher status dwelling within the village. The proposal seeks planning permission for the erection of a 6-bedroom detached replacement dwelling. It will be located broadly in the existing footprint of the dwelling, which, as noted, incorporates a main original section with subservient extensions added over time. I would just advise members that additional information has been submitted today, which has been provided on your desks. So just moving on to the photographs. The first photograph shows the access along the eastern boundary of the site, and this is a sort of more formal access with the tree-lined driveway. The next photograph shows the same sort of scene again, but you can actually see West Cottage to the right-hand side of the photograph. The next photograph is one that's taken internally within the site and shows the front, the principal elevation of the dwelling. The next photograph shows the rear of the dwelling, and it's at this point you can see the kind of historic subservient extension to the right-hand side of the photograph, and the single-storey rear flat roof extension also. The next photograph shows the sort of western elevation of the building. So the extension, which is subservient, has been completed in hanging tiles at that point. The next photograph shows this at just a sort of closer angle, so you can appreciate the kind of historic development of the building over time. And just there on the main part of the dwelling is the flat roof dormer to the front roof slope. The next photograph is showing that just from a more easterly angle. And the next photograph is showing the eastern elevation of the property from within the street scene itself, and it is quite open at that point. The next photograph is looking towards the site from the north. So there are some sporadic trees and hedgerow at this point, but you can quite clearly make out the two-storey dwelling, less so the single-storey garage, which is just in front of it at this point. The next photograph shows this from a slightly different angle, where you are seeing again the two-storey dwelling, and you can appreciate the single-storey pitched roof garage better at that point. The next photograph is that garage that I've just referenced, but from within the sort of functional area of the site. So this is the southern elevation of the existing garage at present. The next photograph is showing the rear and side of that with the actual main dwelling in the background. The next photograph is showing a view of the same sort of area but taken from a more westerly position. So you can see the house towards the right-hand side, the garage towards the left-hand side, and just at the very right-hand side of the photograph is the former stable building, which, as you'll be aware, in the next application that we're going to be dealing with is proposed for conversion. The next photograph is just another view to kind of give the context of the outbuildings in the functional area. And the next photograph is a view towards the sort of front of that former stable building. The next photograph is a view taken from the west, looking back towards the house with the stable building in the foreground. And the next photograph is actually taken from further down Goose Track Lane, with the dwelling itself quite far in the distance at this point. The next photograph is taken from the same sort of approach, but just slightly closer, so it is still to the south of the dwelling. The next photograph is just whenever I'm starting to run through some of the other properties within the street scene in West Lillian. So we have this, and then the next few we can probably go through quite quickly. It just demonstrates the sort of traditional form and character of the wider buildings within the street scene. So we've just got a few more to go through. I've just taken a selection today. Okay, and if we could just go back to the perhaps the first photograph showing the principal elevation of the dwelling. Thank you. Yeah, so as we've noted, it would be the replacement of this dwelling with another 2.5-storey dwelling. It would incorporate one central 2.5-storey section that would span 19 metres from east to west, with a depth of 12 metres from north to south. A further single-storey element is proposed to the west with a pitched roof design, resulting in the property having a maximum span of 24 metres. The main 2.5-storey section would include an overall maximum height of 9.1 metres, with an eaves height of 5.15 metres, and would incorporate a sort of hipped roof form with the central flat roof section on which solar panels could be positioned. The dwelling would be constructed with natural slate roof tiles and white render on a brick base, with blue engineering brick or similar indicated on the proposed plans. The dwelling would be completed with grey aluminium frame doors and windows. In terms of the forthcoming representations, the Parish Council have confirmed they recommend approval of the scheme, and as outlined in the officer's report, 26 letters of support have been received in relation to the scheme between February and March of this year. These were summarised in the officer's report and made available for members to review in full on a planning file on the public access. In terms of principle, as we've noted in the report, the principle of a replacement dwelling in this location is considered to be acceptable, subject to consideration of the other matters. As a replacement dwelling, if approved, it wouldn't be subject to a local needs occupancy condition. So in terms of design and form and character and street scene impact, concern was originally raised with this proposed scheme, the original version, in September 2021. It was concluded that the proposed dwelling was at odds with a vernacular design in Ryedale, as detailed within the Council's Rural Design Guide. We also detailed our concerns that the proposed form and proportions of the building, with a very kind of significant monolithic two-storey element and sizable flat apex to the hipped roof, was not in line with sort of the rural vernacular design. We also had concerns about the fenestration being sort of nondescript in terms of its design and disproportionate. Concern was also raised with certain aspects of the materials, including the significant use of blue engineering brick, which in our view didn't reinforce local distinctiveness. It was noted that this was really a mix of architectural styles, including nods of Georgian detailing, but ultimately resulted in a design of poor quality. There would no longer be the sense of arrival or clear demonstration of the principal elevation with the grand feature entrance that the current property incorporates. The site's, as you've been able to really appreciate from the photographs, it's in quite a prominent position within the village, and therefore, in our view, the inappropriate design would have had a harmful street scene impact. The agent was advised that in its form, the Planning Authority would have no option but to refuse this due to discordance with policies SP 16 and 20. They were urged to reconsider a high-quality traditional design in this location, and further advice was given. Revised plans were received on the 25th of November, which incorporated limited amendments to the overall scheme. These are the plans that we're currently considering. I'll just run through the amendments that were made. The porch on the northern elevation no longer incorporated a Georgian style. It had been replaced with an oak-framed canopy. The previous slightly unusual window above this was regularised. There was an oak frame element to the single-storey section introduced, and the brick course of blue engineering brick between the ground and first floor levels was omitted, but it did remain on the base of the property. The windows to the east were enlarged and provided a better solid to void ratio, and that was the extent of the amendments. Careful review was undertaken on these revised plans with the Planning and Development Manager and with the Council's Building Conservation Officer, and it's considered that while some limited improvements were made, they didn't overcome the fundamental issues with the proposed design. A virtual meeting was undertaken in February this year with the Planning and Development Manager, myself, the architect and the planning agent, and it was considered that this was quite a productive meeting. The local planning authority would previously advise the agent and the architect before this meeting that they could potentially gain officer support for a replacement dwelling if they proceeded one of two ways. The first would be approaching this in design terms to achieve a scheme that better reflected the rural village context and the village's predominant built character and its strong local vernacular. We had made reference to the Council's Rural Design Guide to try and assist in that matter. The alternative that was discussed would have been a very high-quality contemporary design approach. So it was really kind of one or the other that we were hoping to achieve. Following this meeting, the agent and architect sought input on an alternative Victorian Georgian style scheme, and it was in principle quite positively received by officers. And unfortunately, the planning agent confirmed that they wished the current plans, the ones that we are currently considering, to be the ones that were proceeded with. So consequently, it remains our view that the high-quality scheme for the replacement of this dwelling hasn't been submitted or achieved. The proposed monolithic building isn't visually attractive. It doesn't, in our view, relate to good architecture. and the proposed design is concluded to be unacceptable in terms of overall cumulative massing, design positioning and detailing. Therefore, it's not considered to meet with the design requirements of policies SP16 or SP20, nor national policy, which requires a planning system to create high quality, beautiful and sustainable buildings. It's also not considered that the proposed design is reflective of local distinctiveness, which is also referenced in policy SP16, nor fit in within this highly visible site in the village that currently incorporates a dwelling of higher design status, albeit with some unsympathetic later extensions. It's considered that this would detract from and harm the character and street scene of the village. There is a document that I've referred to, provided by the agent today, which is available for members. And I would just draw members' attention to the sort of elevations that are outlined on page 5 of that document. These are the ones that you will have been aware of. They were within the agenda papers. And it's supplemented by the elements on page 6, where some of the design elements contained within the proposed building are shown incorporated within other schemes. It's our view that these examples, just the sort of example pictures, relate to more high quality potential schemes and examples. And whilst obviously they're indicative, they sort of serve to demonstrate the stark contrast between the proposed scheme and what could potentially be achieved at this site. In terms of neighbouring amenity, it's not considered that the proposed development would result in any harm, and it's not considered it would have any harmful impact upon access or highway safety due to the continued uses of the existing access. If members are minded to approve this, we will have discussions with North Yorkshire Highways in terms of whether they would seek a construction management plan condition for small sites. The Internal Drainage Board have also recommended a condition in relation to this scheme. Therefore, to conclude, it's acknowledged that the proposal for a replacement dwelling is acceptable in principle, and this could be undertaken without undue impacts on access and highway safety, amenity and drainage. It's also acknowledged that this would undoubtedly result in a better standard of accommodation for the current occupiers and would be a more sustainable dwelling. However, fundamentally, for the reasons we've outlined, it's not considered to accord with the requirements of policies SP16, SP20 or the MPPF, and consequently it's officer's recommendation that this proposal is refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Niamh. Right, we have a speaker on this one, is the applicant, Mr. Philip Try. Can you hear me, Mr. Try?
I can, sir.
Right, thank you. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My wife and I in 2019 to make it our home with our young family, having a small local business we wish to make close by. Extensive consultation locally has been at the heart of everything we've done. Through discussions with the neighbours and parishioners, it became very apparent that the house would need to remain white. Using this as a starting point and following policy guidance, we then took design reference from the village of West Lilling and established that the design needed to be Georgian and double-fronted. Houses in West Lilling typically have a porch rather than a portico. Our proposal follows those design cues. The existing house has 6 bedrooms across 3 floors and this is also retained. Our REBA accredited architect explored the material and local vernacular present in the village and local area, with each element of the proposed home referenced back to the local area, citing the reason for the design choices. The principal request for us as a family was that the house needs to be sustainable. We are passionate about creating a home that will not only meet our needs, but those of the future generations too, and that will stand the test of time, but be dateable. A house built in 2022 shouldn't be prestige. We should be respectful of design elements of local vernacular with energy efficiency at its heart. The principle of development in this application is not in question. With the planning officer stating this in writing, the planning officer also agreed in writing that this house, due to the extensions and alterations, was of no heritage value. We are at planning committee with this application as its subjective opinion of the planning officer is that the design is not appropriate. We, our neighbours and the parish council are the people who must live with this on our doorstep, and we have received a staggering number of support letters for the design we have proposed. There are no objections from statutory consultees. We feel that the significant design changes undertaken to the proposal in response to the planning officer's feedback have not been given the consideration they warrant in the officer's report. The report implies that we've been unresponsive and unwilling to work with the planning officer. On the contrary, we've addressed every concern raised that relates to the local plan and the NPPF. We have provided photographic examples supporting our rationale, which has been largely ignored. We reached a point where we had compromised on as much as we were willing to, and the case officer had no further specific amendments they wished to be made. We could therefore no longer work with our family with 2 young children trapped in a house that's essentially uninhabitable. We respectfully request that the opinion and wishes of ourselves, our neighbours and the parish council are respected, and you move to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Try. Okay, do we have any questions? I see no hands. No questions? Right, well, we'll move into debate. I believe this is Councillor Goodrich's patch, but you're next door. Eric, do you want to open up?
Yeah, it is mine, Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, excuse me if I lose my voice halfway through, so I have to carry on. This house has been here for quite a long time, and it's been a focal point of when you come into Lurleen there. Just stand right on the roadside. I can see what the gentleman says about the dating of it. It's been there a long time. I think it used to go as the parish council meetings sometimes. They used to have them there every time. And but I just wonder if it's worth a site visit.
You're entitled to propose that, Eric.
Well, yes, all right, then I'll propose a site visit.
Do we have a seconder for a site visit? Councillor Dockra? Right. Yeah, Councillor Cleary, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, although it's certainly not in my ward, it's properly I know well. And I would have, in fact, I did put my hand up, but Councillor Dockra caught your eye first. Yeah, I think my reasoning for requesting or for supporting a site visit is that whilst I'm very pleased to read the report, and Neve's obviously put a lot of work into it, I'm slightly at a loss to, it's a subjective thing, and I was very interested to hear the applicant use the word pastiche. It's a word I would have used. I've been accused of, when trying to follow the vernacular, of presenting a pastiche. It's a very fine line, and I think a site visit will allow us to exactly see, despite the good photographs that we've seen, actually how the current, although it's a prominent house, it's set well back and hidden, the details are hidden, and I just wonder how much of the details of the proposed, the application site, how many of those details would actually be visible in any great extent from the road. It's a fine line, I know, but we've seen a number of more modern, even more striking, for want of a better word, properties proposed and accepted, including one at Cornborough. And whilst it's not in my own taste, I can't find how it's an objectionable design. So I think I would support the site visit to allow us to see how this sits on the ground in the flesh, as it were. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to have a word? Yeah, Councillor Dockra.
Yeah, I've looked at this and I know this property very, very well. I've been past it literally hundreds of times. And it's very clear from, as you drive past and actually you look at it, that the current house is beyond reasonable repair and use, you can see. And I wouldn't want to be paying the heating bills on that property currently. What I was shocked at when I've read all this is the overwhelming support from residents and the parish council. And I think, you know, if these people are happy to live with it, who's it for us to say that it's not right? The property is well set back from the road. As I say, I do not set well back from the road, but as you go round the bend, you wouldn't see the main part of the property. So I think a site visit would be well worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thackeray.
Well, I hesitate to say these things, but I tend to think that to approve this dwelling, which I have no issues about approving the restoration, renovation, rebuilding of this building at all, but I do have my own opinions about the style, the architectural style and the overall look of the property. And the one item or one ingredient that I appreciate is entirely subjective, but nevertheless that's what we are here to offer, our subjective views. And I cannot find the beauty in this building, and I think that's the ingredient that the officers have found to be missing. And it's an opportunity, well, as we heard from the officer, there were two approaches that could have been taken by the applicant. One was to say, OK, let's come back with a Kevin MacLeod special. Let's have a grand design, or let's at least have something of the 21st century with as much individuality as anybody wants to throw at it. And unfortunately, what we've got is a renovated house, basically, that doesn't, it kind of nods in several directions, but doesn't actually jump, it certainly doesn't jump out as me as something that's got any particular quality of its own and style, really. I hope going and have a look at it might, I doubt if it'll change my opinion of the drawings here, but it might inspire new ideas, I think. I think it's a great opportunity that might just be wasted, really.
Thank you, Councillor Thackeray. Anybody else wish to speak on this before we go to the vote? No? Well, it's been proposed and seconded for a site visit, so we will go to the vote on that.
Councillor Braxton?
For.
Councillor Cleary?
For.
Councillor Dockerer?
For.
Councillor Graham?
For.
Councillor Hope?
For.
Councillor Mason?
For.
Councillor Potter?
For.
Councillor Thackeray?
For.
Councillor Windress?
For.
That's 9 votes for the site visit.
Right, thank you. That's been decided as a site visit. In this case, we go on to agenda item 9, which is 21/00284 full erection of detached 3-bay garage building with first floor accommodation to form 1 2-bedroom annex following demolition of existing building and change of use of stable to allow use as home office to include the installation of dormer window and 2 roof lights. Now, I would suggest that as we're going for a site visit, it would appear to me to be sensible to defer this item pending the site visit. Do I have agreement in that? So,
I'll agree, Chairman.
yeah, right. Well, in that case, just for the formalities, I'll propose a site visit. Yeah, Councillor Cleary seconding that. And I think, have we got any objections to that, or should we take that as, yeah, by general affirmation? Thank you. Right, that's that item dealt with. So, yeah, Mr. Try, I don't think you'll need to speak on that second one.
That's a shame. I've been preparing all day.
Save it for the next time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Try. Oops, sorry. That brings us up to item number 12 on the agenda, to which I will be retiring. So if Councillor Cleary would care to take over for a while. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Agenda item 12, which you'll find on page 159. Application number 21/01252/full, Allaston Parish Council. Change of use and external alterations to agricultural building to form a joint.
Aerial photo to start with, that would be helpful, thank you. The application is subject to objections and is therefore reported to Planning Committee for determination. The building, the subject of the application, as you can see on the aerial photo, is in existence, and it's been, it was subject of a planning permission granted approximately 9 years ago. The proposal is for the conversion of that building, which is an agricultural building, to provide a small-scale joinery business. So the conversion of that building and the associated job creation is supported in principle by local and national planning policy. There will be no change to the dimensions of the existing building, and the design and appearance, as altered, is considered to be acceptable and not inappropriate in the rural context. Due to the nature and scale of the development, no highways issues are anticipated, and the access has already been improved to highway standards, as will be shown in the photos. The impact of noise on residential amenity and users of the holiday accommodation has been the principal concern raised by the objectors. The Council's Environmental Health Officer and the applicant's noise consultant have sought to resolve those concerns through the submission of further information, which includes on-site mitigation in the form of alterations to the internal parts of the building and also the provision of an acoustic fence. The result is that the noise impact has been deemed acceptable by the EHO, subject to a number of conditions as detailed at the end of the report. It is therefore recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the 25 conditions as listed at the end of the report. I'll just run through the slides for this item, the photographs. So yes, if we could just go back to the aerial photo, please. Yeah, so just to highlight obviously we've got the application site with the existing building, which is in the northeast corner of an existing paddock. To the east of the site is New South Farmhouse. To the northeast is Station Cottage, and to the northeast is the old station. They are all residential properties. To the north of the site, you'll be able to make out the old converted railway carriages which stand along the old railway line, which have been converted to holiday accommodation associated with the old station. So the representations we've received are from the 3 residential properties that are marked, and also from holiday makers who use the existing business. So moving on to the next slide, please. So this is an extract from the site location plan. It does show the areas of hard standing to the side and rear of the building. It also shows the position of the acoustic fence. So the acoustic fence is on the northern and southern sides of the building, and it runs parallel with the eastern boundary, although at the northern end there is a return, so it's an L-shaped footprint to the north of the building to provide additional noise screening to the railway carriages to the north of the site. You can also see the existing access point, which would be unchanged, and also the position of the landscape planting on the northern side of the site, and also the drainage arrangements. The acoustic fence is actually 2.5 metres high, as proposed. So moving on to the next slide, please. So this is taken facing into the site from the access off Malton Lane. So in front of you there, you can see the building, the subject of the application. As you can see, the access has been improved in recent times, so it's got a smooth surface to ensure no materials dragged onto the public highway. Moving on to the next slide, please. So again, this is a close-up of the western side of the existing building. So obviously you can see the 2 open bays. There's 4 bays that comprise the building, and there's 2 open bays on the western elevation. The elevation drawings are on page 172 of the report, and those bays would be enclosed by a continuation of the existing treatment along that elevation, which is the concrete blockwork, concrete panels and the vertical timber boarding, and also there would be a roller shutter door in this elevation, providing access to the machine room within the building. So moving on to the next slide, please. This is the northern end of the building, which would be unchanged, but it would be in this position where there would be the acoustic fence would be on the left-hand side of that photo, just out of shot, and also across the front of this elevation to provide that acoustic barrier. Moving on to the next photo, please. Again, this is just facing back towards that northeast corner of the site where the acoustic fence would be installed. And then this photo's taken facing north, so you can actually see the existing access, obviously the building on the right hand side. There would be no change in terms of hard standing. At the moment it's all permeable hard standing. Actually in the background of that photo you can actually see the roof of the railway carriages in the background. And moving on to the next slide, please. Just panning round, this is facing northeast towards the southern elevation. So this elevation, the metal sheeting at the upper parts of the wall would be replaced with timber boarding. The existing opening would have a roller shutter door providing access to the assembly space, and to the left of the existing opening would be a door and a window to provide access for employees. And also it also shows the areas of hard standing to the south of the building, which would be used for access and parking. So to the right hand side of the building, the acoustic fence would run parallel to the hedgerow along the eastern boundary. And I believe that is the final. Yeah, the final photos are actually back at the access point with the public highway, just showing the existing surface of the access. And just the next photo is panning round towards the northeast, and you can just see between the trees the roof of the old station residential property. And then the next and final photo is panning round north, and that's facing across the road, and you can just make out the former railway carriages from that angle. So I believe that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair, and I believe the applicant is due to speak on this item.
Thank you. Mr. Stead, have we got you there?
Hello.
You've got 3 minutes if you'd like to start now. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I have COVID, so if you can't hear me, just bear with me. The three main issues of concern that have been raised: noise, traffic, and visual impact. Firstly, the visual impact. We've tried to put screening trees in the way so that the shed itself will be less visual than it currently is. Secondly, traffic movements, where in terms of the size of the site, it's a 30 by 60 foot shed. So as Alan said, it's a small development. So there won't be that many employees, a couple of cars in the morning and a few deliveries during the week. So, and there's already quite a few tractors go down that lane, so it won't have a massive impact. Thirdly, the noise. We've worked with a noise consultant. They recommended insulating the whole shed and putting these specialist high specification doors, which is outlined in the plan application. So that'll help the energy efficiency as well as limiting the noise. We've put the fence in. The fence, we weren't going to put the fence in, but on consultation with the environmental health officer, we thought it would be better to put the fence there to further help reduce the noise. And so yeah, and we've had a noise assessment which basically shows that this will be within an acceptable limit. So yeah, in summary, it's myself. The field's been in my family sort of 40 years. It's myself and my brother doing the application, doing the business, and we want to have a go of it. And I hope the committee can see the benefits, sort of well-paid jobs and supporting innovation in our community. And it's got the backing of the parish council with conditions as outlined by Alan. Yeah, thank you for the summary, Alan, and yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stead. Have we any questions for the officer? Can I tempt you, Councillor Thackeray?
Never let a good shed go, I say. But it's not really a question. I just wondered why there was an acoustic fence where there is in parallel to a concrete block wall, which I would have thought would have been a satisfactory structure. What I did notice, looking at the photographs, is that, and it may have been answered by the applicant just now, actually, because we seem to have the traditional farm building concrete block walls followed by corrugated cladding. I thought if there's any noise going to get out of that building, number one, it's going to get out of an open door, that's obvious, but it will go through the cladding rather than through the concrete block. So to build it up or to insulate for sound all the cladding areas was certainly, it sounds to me as if that's part of the scheme anyway.
Alan, would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That is a correct interpretation of the plans, yeah.
For once, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
It sort of follows on from Simon. I think when the applicant has stated they're going to insulate up the entirety of the shed, I think that makes me a lot more comfortable with the noise issue. But looking at the plans, I'm assuming the workshop's going to be towards the back anyway, because you won't be able to fit it in the front section as well. And owning a woodworking shop, you kind of know where the noise comes from, and I think it's as far away as possible. I'm more than comfortable with this one, to be honest.
And the question is?
Question is the workshop towards the back or the front? Do we know?
The actual machine room is in the northeastern corner. So it's so the machine room, which is shown as being fully insulated, is at the northern end of the building. The southern part of the building is the assembly and finishing area. So there would be noise generated from both areas. But there are conditions about doors being closed and hours of operation.
Cheers, thank you. I mean, looking at that, then it's a very small machine shop, to be honest.
Any further questions before we go into debate? Councillor Thackeray.
Yes, I haven't, apologies, I haven't studied the conditions, but I just wondered if there was any condition over the hours of use.
Yes, there is. Condition 10 relates to hours of operation.
What page is that, please?
With me.
Sorry, what was that? Thank you.
Yeah, so conditions 10 and 11. Condition 10 limits hours of operation to 8 till 6 Monday to Friday and 9 till 1 Saturdays, and condition 11 relates to hours of deliveries to the same times.
Thank you. I don't know who the more local member is. Councillor Braxton? Ish,
yes. Yeah, I don't mind proposing this at all. You know, it's jobs for local people, and yeah, to me, if it's approved by the parish council, then I'm more than happy to push this one forward. Thank you.
anybody? Councillor Mason.
I don't mind seconding.
Thank you. Any more for any more? Yeah, it seems a good use of a fairly modest, useful building. Any good reason to use a shed? I'm going to support this. It's been proposed and seconded. Any more for any more before I go to the vote? No, it's been proposed and seconded. So we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
Councillor Braxton.
4.
Councillor Cleary.
4.
Councillor Duckra.
4.
Councillor Graham.
4.
Councillor Hope.
4.
Councillor Mason.
4.
Councillor Thackeray.
4.
Councillor Windress.
4.
That's 8 votes for. That's unanimous.
It is carried.
Right, thank you, Michael. Right, well, as we have deleted item 13 from the agenda, we are now down to the dregs of any any other business. Anybody got anything that they need to raise? No, I'm not seeing anything there. List of applications determined under delegated powers on page 202. Do we have any comments on those? I can see no ships. Right, we do have an appeal decision on page 210. Does anybody want to speak about that? Councillor Cleary, go ahead.
Yeah, just an interesting, I can't quite place it myself. Page 211, paragraph 7, the the inspector refers to Highways England. I can't think that Highways England would have a view on this particular site. I just wonder whether, I don't know what to think really, but sometimes you wonder what inspectors are, what they've actually seen. There might be, but I don't see what either of them are doing at Slingsby. Yeah. So I just wonder what details, other details possibly the inspectors missed or seen.
I couldn't possibly comment. Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Right, well, I believe that's the end of business for tonight, so I declare this meeting closed. Thank you.
No, sorry.
I think, given it's Easter, I think we're looking at the 26th, did we say? Tuesday the 26th?
May the 4th be with you. 26th, I've just said because it's the Easter week. That is Tuesday the 26th. How's that with everybody? I'm not seeing any dissenting. No, this is going to be April because we're going to be into the next planning meeting otherwise. Right. Yeah. That's not looking too good. We've got 2 who can't do it. Was anybody else? No, can't do that. So have we got an alternative to that?
The 19th?
What's the Monday the 25th like? Is that not good?
No, that's true. But then we've got the election that week, isn't it?
Monday the 25th?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, I think Monday the 25th. I mean, it's not. We normally have them on Tuesdays, but if members, if Monday the 25th is.
How is Monday the 25th? I'm getting a nod. Yeah. You're all right? Well, I think we're getting more agreement for Monday the 25th. So, any particular time?
Maybe 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock?
April time.
I'll probably get there on my bike in that time.
10:30.
No, 10 o'clock's all right. Right, so Monday the 25th of April, 10:00 at West Lilling. Right, that's about it. Thank you, everybody. Definitely closed again.
So you're going to eject? You're getting ready to go.